Hi there, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. My name is Melanie, and today I am going to share with you the basics of this mini album that I already shared with you. So we're kind of going back in time, but I did feel that not everybody is interested in the nitty gritty of how to come up with the basic construction, and so that's why I posted it second. For those of you that are interested, it is a long one, so let's get started.
Okay, so I think I've got an idea or a concept written out. I've got a concept figured out in my head. I'm flying by the seat of my pants, you guys. So hopefully this will all work out and everything will make sense. I guess worst case, if it doesn't, I'll just start over. Okay, so I think I've got the math and everything all worked out. Who knows if I've got it right or not. This may be the second or third take. I am pleading the fifth on this one. So I'm going to make an accordion spine, which means we need a longer piece of cardstock than the actual spine itself. And so what I think I figured out is we need a 10 by 6 or 6 by 10. So I've got an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, just regular cardstock, about 80 pounds. If you want to go heavier, you can. You're just going to have a little bit harder time folding, but it's up to you. So I'm going to make this 6 inches wide, and I'm going to go 10 inches long. And then we're going to score. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take 1 inch and we're going to score on either side. Do I need to flip the paper? No, I could have scored at 1 at 9, but I'm just making my life a little bit easier. And then we are going to score at a 1/2 inch in between. So every 1/2 inch, so I was on the wrong channel. So 1/2 inch all the way down. I should not be doing this late at night, you guys. It should be super easy. Now the reason why I am opting for 1/2 inch is because I want to have a little bit of a gap in between my pages to allow for bulk. Okay, let's put this away. So on the either end, we're going to fold it up. This is going to be where our front covers are, our front and back cover are attached. So we want to just give that a nice crease. So the first, I've just kind of given this a temporary start so you could see what's happening. So this first 1/2 inch, we actually want it to be recessed. So I have it going this way, but it really needs to go the other way. So let's just give that a fold in the opposite direction. Okay, because we want this to be a valley or a channel. Okay, so then this next one we're going to go up to make a mountain out of it. I'm going to give that a good press. Okay, so we've got something that looks like that. And then this one, we're going to form that mountain, right? So right now we've got like a slope. We want it to be an actual mountain. So we are just going to fold it the opposite way, okay? So we've got up, flat, mountain. This next 1/2 inch is going to be flat. So we want to fold this back on itself, right? So you can see this is what we've got going on, right? So flat, mountain, flat. Okay, then we're going to do the mountain. Okay. And we're just going to continue this pattern all the way through. If you mess up, it's not the end of the world. Trust me, I've messed up myself a couple times. The important part is that you just get it bent in the correct way that you want it to go after. You're not going to see pretty much most of this. The only part you will end up seeing in your completed album will be the flat channels. Everything else is going to be wedged in between your pages. So just again, right? Flat, mountain, flat, mountain, flat, mountain. Okay, I'm going to finish doing this and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is what it should look like. You should have 5 mountains and then the 2 flaps. And when we squish this all together, it is going to look something like this. So that's going to be the next step. You can either use double-sided tape or glue. It's up to you. And if you find this confusing to know which ones you're going to glue together, what you can do is just kind of squish it all up, right? And then once you have this clearly defined which ones are the mountains, you could just put a little mark on the 2 sides that you want glued together. Okay, it should be pretty obvious because we don't want to glue the flats, but if you like that visual clue, just make a little scratch mark on the other side, on either side. Now I'm going to use liquid glue just because it's a little bit more economical, but if you have double-sided tape and want to use that, by all means go right ahead. This glue sets pretty quick, so I'm not too worried about it, and I'm going to give that a good press. And even lay it flat and press. If you want to, you know, put something heavy on it, you can. That's not very heavy, but to me this glue sets up fast enough that I don't feel I need to do that. By the time I've pressed it down a couple times, it's usually good to go. So again, I'm just going to rub my hands back and forth. Okay, give that a good press and then continue on. Again, because I have those visual cues, I don't even really have to think, but it's not hard, you guys. You can do this. But it's not that hard, right? I just like to be a little bit careful because sometimes when I get crafting, I'm not always thinking the way that I should, and I make silly mistakes. Okay, and I'm just pressing this down as I go along so that it lies flat. Again, don't have to do that. I just like to. Okay. We got one more set to glue. If you haven't scored this well at this point, you should do that. You do want to make sure that everything folds backwards forwards and backwards well, because this is what your pages are going to be attached to. Okay, so you should have something that looks like this when you are done. Now I will use tape for the next part, and what we are going to do is we are going to apply tape on every line, so on every of the flat pieces. I'm going to use 1/4 inch tape because that's what I have handy, but if you have wider tape, of course you could probably go through this pretty quick. Again, so on each channel I am just running the tape. Now you do not want to cover this 1-inch flap. You do not want to cover that seam. Okay, so not seam, but that fold. But you do want to apply tape on the flaps as well. Just don't go over top of that fold, because that fold is going to be part of the hinge of the cover, and so we want it to be able to move. If you add tape to it, it's going to bulk up that, and then you're going to run the risk of tearing, etc., which we don't want. Now, I'm not doing this like back to back. I know some people will be very particular about covering every square inch of their spine. I'm going to add some liquid glue when I glue this down, so I'm okay with that. The other thing we want to do while we're here is we want to measure. So this is the 1-inch flap. We want to measure this width, because that is the width of our spine. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have that measurement, because that will impact the rest of our calculations for the cover. And that is 3 inches. Okay, so if you follow the same measurements as me, it should be a 3-inch spine. Let's move on to making the cover. Okay, so I had some chipboard in my stash. I just get this when I purchase things online. They add chipboard, or I use covers from paper pads, that kind of thing. And we are going to trim this to 6.5 by 6.5, because that is the size I want my cover to be. And we are going to need 2 of these, and I can't get 2 for 1 sheet. So we are going to use the second sheet. Yeah. And we already measured our spine, and it's 3 inches wide. This scrap piece is only 2.5, so that's not going to work. But fortunately, we have a bunch of other scraps. So I'm just going to trim this to 3 inches wide. We're just going to double check that again. That looks about right. Okay. 3 inches by 6.5. These are scraps. I do not recycle these because these make great spines for other albums, etc. So I'm going to hold on to those. The other thing we are going to need is spacers, and I like to do a double thickness of the spine as a spacer. So I'm going to hold on to these 2 sheets. This is going to go back in with my chipboard scraps, and then we'll move on to the next step. So now that we have our chipboard cut out, the next thing we're going to do is make a cover and bind the 2 covers and the spines together. I'm opting to use 2 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper to do this. Again, the finished size of my album is going to be 6.5 by 6.5. What that does is it leaves me a 1/2 inch on either side in order to fold over. And with an 11 inch, leaving it at 11 inch, I've got a 1/2 inch to fold over this way. I've got the seam, or the bend in the spine, 3 inches for the spine itself, and then another bend, and this will overlap, and I'm hoping what this will do is just reinforce that bend. It might make it too bulky, we'll see, but that's what I'm hoping. And I've done the exact opposite on the other side. Or I guess if you do 2 the same way, you're going to want to flip it. So ultimately at the end of this, we're going to want to line up this line with this line and adhere that, and this line with that line. But before we do that, we're going to do a bit of a dry run, because, you know, we always want to measure things multiple times before we finish them up. So I have my cover. So this should line up in this corner, and I measured properly. So it should line up like so, and this should line up here. It looks like I've got a slight variation. That's okay. We'll make that work. And then the spine is going to go right here in the middle. And I noticed that I don't actually have enough space in here. So we are going to tweak this a little bit. I did mention that you would want to have a 2-inch gap, not a 2-inch, you want to have a double thickness gap between the spine and your chipboard, and that's just to allow for this to be able to bend. Okay, so this is partly why I haven't glued anything down, because we're checking my measurements, right? So we are just going to tweak that edge out a little bit, and to be honest, I am not going to score that. We're just going to let that fall where it may, and we'll use a scoring tool afterwards. Okay, so how do I want to proceed? I want to adhere this down. I am going to use a combination of double-sided tape and liquid glue, and the first thing I am going to work on is the spine on the right hand side. So let's adhere some tape. Tape and chipboard doesn't always work so well. If you ever use like chipboard ephemera pieces, you'll know what I mean. The tape just kind of peels right off, which is why I'm using a combination of both. Also, I will run the adhesive just slightly over top of that tape. It gives it a little bit of slide, so that if I need to reposition this or shift this a little bit, I have a little bit of wiggle room. Otherwise, the tape's usually quite tacky. So I am just going to line that up with the top line. That's going to be my base measurement, and in between those two lines that I drew earlier. Okay, I am going to take my scoring tool and I'm just going to run that along that edge. If you wanted to pull out your scoreboard, we can give that a try as well. So it's going to be score it on the side. Now this is thinner cardstock, it's only 80 pounds, so do be careful you don't want it to cut through the edge. And then we're just going to gradually bend this up and around to kind of train it. I'm going to do the same on this side. Okay. Okay, so that looks good. Let's add some tape. I'm more concerned about the pieces being the same size than I am about my measurements on the paper. I did that more for a guideline for myself and also for you visually so you could see what it is I'm doing. Okay, do that. Let's add some. Let's add some liquid glue. I have my spacers clipped together. I am going to butt that up against the edge of the spine. We're going to flip this over. We're going to use that same pencil line as a guide and adhere that down. So we've already got this trained, and you can see how that gap was necessary in order for this to bend. You may want to go 3 if you like it a little bit looser. For me, I'm sticking with 2. Okay. And we're just going to score along the edge. And while we're here, we might as well score along this edge as well. This one. And we will just gradually train that up. Same with this one. And same with this one. So now we're ready to move on to the other side. So for this one, I'm going to take the scoreboard again, but this time I'm going to score it before we adhere it. So we're just going to score that. And I'm just going to score it 3 inches over from that. That should be good. We'll find out if my measurements are any good. I don't sweat this stuff, you guys, to be honest. I really don't. I just go with the flow. It's just paper. Just paper. Okay, so here's the other side, and we are going to basically line this up. It might even be easier to do it this way, where we're just going to, yeah, that'll work. So I'm going to apply some adhesive on the back. I'm opting not to go all the way to the edge just in case I, you know, change my mind about how I want to do something, but I can always go back and pop in some liquid glue if necessary. And I am going to apply some glue on this edge and right up against this one. And again, I'm just going to dot some glue onto the tape to give it a little bit of wiggle. Okay, let's affix this. We want this fold to be on that fold. See how I did. I forgot to put adhesive here. Go figure, right? Remembered it on this side, not on that one. Okay. Give this a good score. Give this a good press. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Let's attach this. Make sure that's the same size, which it is. And repeat with the glue. Take our spacer, and again we're going to line it up with that top. Okay, now we're going to just repeat the same along this edge, score and fold it over like this one. Okay, so before we go any further, we need to trim off some of the bulk in the corners. I'm going to use my spacer again, and I am just going to kind of butt that up against the corner and create an angle, and I'm just going to draw a line across like that. That's going to be my trim guide, and I'm doing this to make sure I have enough paper to cover the corners. I don't know if you've ever made an album and when you go to miter the corners you end up with a gap, which it's not so good. I think there was actually, I think I saw someone the other day actually have a tool for this, which I thought was kind of interesting, but I don't have a tool, so this is how I'm going to handle it. And I am going to trim on the outside of that line. Hopefully this will do the trick. If I mess up, I guess you'll find out here shortly. And it doesn't have to be super precise as far as the angle and stuff goes, but we do want to make sure we leave enough to cover that corner. Okay, so now we're going to just kind of reinforce all of these folds again. Just so that the next part of this goes smoothly. Okay, and we're going to take our tape and we are going to run this along the edge of each of the pieces. Just like so. I am breaking the tape at the centers because I don't want stuff to stick there and create some weird bulk, preventing the book from closing. And the overlap we have is 1 inch, and the tape that I'm using is 1/4 inch, which means we are going to, this is going to extend beyond that tape. So I am also going to apply tape along the outside edge or the perimeter of the flaps that are being folded over. And for this one, I am going to go straight across. Maybe a bad decision. I'm not too sure. I guess we'll find out, like everything. Oh, you guys, you're getting a true insight into how much I wing these projects sometimes. I could sit here and plan it all out, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to let it go. Like, you just have to do it. Right? Right. So I'm just going to peel up the sides, or the top and bottom first. You may want to make sure you give this a good press. And we're going to just kind of gently fold this up and over. We're going to start in the center and work our way to the edge. Okay, so there is a bit of a gap here because remember I did not adhere that down. So I am going to add some liquid glue. And this glue dries pretty quickly, so I don't have to hold this down for too long. If you're concerned about it, of course, you could put a weight or something on it. Okay, let's flip this around and do the other side. Same deal, we're going to start in the middle, push up and over, and we've got that flap that's loose. We're just going to add some tape. And of course, by the time we add the spine and all the other layers on here, you're not even going to know that that is there. Okay, I want to take my bone folder and I am just going to go over this center section and score. And this might be where we find out I made a mistake by overlapping that paper. But I really did think that having it reinforced would be a good idea. Guess we'll find out. Looking good so far. So now we have to just do this particular edge, and we're going to watch the miter corner. You'll see that there is a bit of an overlap. You see how this edge kind of pops up. We want to just gently fold that in or down, I guess, like press it down so that it's going to fold over nicely. And we're going to do that on all four. I'm using my tweezers because I just grabbed it, but you could use your bone folder. Right, so we're just kind of pressing that down so when this flap comes over, it will be nice and neat. So again, just pressing that down. Okay, and now we're just going to do a trial run of this. Fold it over. If for some reason this is not looking neat and you need to trim it, you want to just start from the edge and work in But in my case, I don't know if you can see this. It's looking really nice and neat and even, so I don't think I need to trim that down. I'm just gonna not risk it and leave it as is. Let's pull up the tape and adhere this down. Okay, so now we have the base of our book, and we are going to put this seam in the back, even though we're going to cover this all and you won't really see this. Just want to be extra careful, right? I'm just checking. Yeah, see, I've got a little bit of bubbling there. I'm just going to add a little bit more adhesive. What's nice with these little bottles is that you can just stick this in. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is attach the spine. So we did this earlier. There is a lot of tape on here. I am going to peel off all the bits in the middle, so not on the 1-inch flap. I'm just going to leave that for now. Hopefully gives me a little bit of a chance of adhering this down without making a mess of it. I am going to use the trick of adding a little bit of liquid adhesive on this. Again, it just allows this sequin tape to be a little bit more forgiving, but we still get the adhesive value of the sequin tape, I guess. Is that the right way of putting it? I'm just going in between the tape. Just like so. Okay, and just kind of a little bit over that tape. Okay. Remember, this is only 6 inches. I still have the tape attached on the edges, and we want the folds to align with the folds of the book. And the book is 6.5, this is 6, so we want about 1/4 of an inch top and bottom. And if you don't get this lined up perfectly, it's not the end of the world, because of course this is paper and paper will give if it needs to. So I'm just going to attach this down, or what do you want to call it, burnish it down, so that that is firmly in there. You want to use your bone folder, you can do that too. And now we're just going to peel off this back. Could do the front too, doesn't really matter. We're going to add some liquid adhesive and give that a good press, and the same on the other side. I'm going to have adhesive backing everywhere. I'm such a messy crafter. Okay, and we're going to give that one down. And let's give this a good score again. We want this to be within that channel. Be careful that you do not break the paper, so don't be too aggressive. Give that a good bend. A moment of truth. And there's the base of our book. The thing we have to do now is make our pages. But this is the hardest part, so we're almost there, you guys. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to make our pages. I'm keeping this super simple. All of my pages are going to be the exact same with the exception of one set, but the general look is going to be a 6 1/4 by 6 1/4, and then I have a pocket that is folded around the edge. To make the pocket, you will need a 2.5 by 6 3/4, and it's bigger, of course, because we're wrapping around the back side. So I'm basically just using one 8.5 by 11 piece of paper for each page. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim this to 6 1/4 by 6 1/4, and we need 8 of these. And then we're going to take the larger scrap and we are going to trim this to 2 1/2 by 6 3/4. Okay, so we need 8 of these total. The next thing I'm going to do is take these acetate sheets that I made earlier. I'm going to insert the clip here showing you how I made that. Okay, so for those of you that caught my Smash Your Stash video where we featured using sequins, enamel dots, that kind of thing, I showed you some laminated panels that I made, and I'm going to use those in this project, but I thought I'd show you how I did this because it's super simple. It's not my original idea. I think Jennifer McGuire showed us a couple years ago how to do this, but in case you haven't seen that video, this is how we are going to make this work. So I have my laminator. This is just an Amazon Basics laminator. I have some laminating pouches. I think these are about the 8 1/2 by 11 size, maybe slightly bigger to fit an 8 1/2 by 11 paper. The paper that I am using is this Mintay Mamarazzi paper pack, and I pulled out 2 different types of sequins. These Felicity Jane gold, and they look like they're crimped sequins, and I thought I would use some of these rose gold, the small ones. I think those 2 colors will look really well with this. I think the flatter the sequins, the better it will work, but this seems to work okay with the slightly cupped sequins. So I'm just going to open up the laminator pouch, and I'm going to somewhat sporadically drop some sequins on here, and I'm going to cut these down to different sizes. So I want enough on here that when I cut them down you can still see them but I don't want too much because I still want to be able to kind of see through the panels. I also want to make sure that they don't overlap because I don't want a lot of bulk. We are going to run this through the laminator, so we want to make sure that we don't have it too bulky. That makes sense? Hopefully it does. I think that's enough gold. I don't think anything else is overlapping. Let's try the rose gold. And I'm just kind of letting them fall where they will, except if they are overlapping, then we will sort those out. Okay, let's see if we can maybe add a few more up here at the top. Of course, I say that I'm just gonna let them fall where they will, and then I'm shifting them around. Here's the thing, you guys. I find that if you play around too much with it, it'll end up looking overworked, and you would be much happier with just having them randomly fall. You can also do glitter and embossing powder, and I think maybe I'll add a little bit of embossing powder. I do have some iridescent ice Stampin' Up! Embossing powder. Here's the thing with the embossing powder I have found, or glitter, is you want to be very sparing, as in less is more. So I don't want to go too overboard as I say that. It's a reminder to myself because I do go overboard all the time. I don't know when to stop. And you're probably telling me to stop right now, right? I know. Okay, so my laminator is nice and heated up. We're just going to fold this back. Just like so. Sorry for the glare. This is the fold side. So now the key is to pick this up without having too much of it shift. I slid a piece of cardstock underneath just to give it some stability while it's going through the machine. I noticed I had some shifting, so I'm just gonna fix those. You want to make sure all the sequins are flat. So I've got some here that are sticking up. Try to make sure none of them are overlapped. And once this is finished heating up, we will run this through. Just going to support it as it feeds through. I sometimes have a problem getting it to go in straight, but I think I should be okay. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You can see the little bits of glitter, and the sequins are encapsulated. Okay, so now that I've got the sheet, this is about 8.5 by 11. I think it's actually a little bit longer. It's maybe 9 by something or whatever. Yeah, it is. But I'm going to trim this to 6.25 by 6.25 as well. I think I'm going to leave the rounded corners on here. I think I kind of like that. So we're just going to trim that way, and 6.25 this way. And because I chopped off some of the corners, and I don't know what size this is, let's start with the one that's rounded already. Looks like it's about 1/4 inch. I'm just going to go around and round these. Am I going to round the other pages? No. Could you? I would say you could round the top, but not the bottoms. That just might look a little bit weird, maybe. I don't know. Plus you'll probably open up the seal on your pocket. So I'm going to leave those square, but these ones I am going to round. Again, it's plastic. It could be a little bit sharper. I don't know. We'll see. We've got scraps which we're going to hold on to because maybe we can use them to decorate the book. And I'm going to pull a second sheet here and do the same. Okay, now these will be sandwiched, so they are going to look something like that. If you can play around with this a little bit and find a better fit. Like this one is going to have less overlap, so that's probably how I'm going to use it, but we'll see when I ultimately get down to assembling this. Pull out your score board because that's the next step. Okay, so we've got our 8 sheets of 6.25 by 6.25. You should have 8 2.5 by 6.75. And what we're going to do now is we are going to score at 1/4 inch on 3 sides. So we're going to go 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, and flip it on the side and do 1/4 inch. Okay, so it should look, if you can see that, something like that. You're going to do all 8 of those. Okay, now that you have them all scored, we do want to just cut at the diagonal. I don't know if you can see this. So this is a score line and this is a score line, so you want to cut on that side of the diagonal. I mean on that side of the corner, and that's just to eliminate bulk. You're going to do that for all 8. You're going to take your bone folder, of course, and you are going to fold along the score and give that a good crease. You want to fold these all on the inside. Woo. Just like so. And then I'm going to unfold it. Okay, so it's looking like this. And I am going to apply tape on the inside of that 1/4 inch. Now, if this is too tight for your tape, before you get started, you need to change your measurements so that you have more than 1/4 inch, right? So my 1/4 inch tape I think would be too tight for this, so I'm using 1/8 of an inch. But if I wanted to use my 1/4, I would probably increase this to probably a 3/4 inch allowance instead of 1/4, so I would adjust my width and height accordingly. and I would assembly line this, right? So I would do all of this first, but because I'm doing video, I'm going to show you the full steps so you see exactly how it all comes together. So this is my 6 1/4 by 6 1/4 page. I'm going to do a dry fit. Again, I like to make sure that everything looks good before I get started. And I'm just going to kind of slide that in to the pocket. And I'm going to double check that if I fold that over and this over and this over, that this works. At this point, if I feel this is too snug, I may want to check my measurements and make sure this is the same size, or, you know, recut this piece and give myself a little bit more room. But it's looking good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel off the backing for the bottom part of the channel. Make sure that that is still straight. Give that a good fix. And then I'm going to do the edges. And what that is going to do is give you a pocket on the other side. And what I like about this pocket is it gives you an uninterrupted channel. So yes, you could glue the pocket on the front instead of wrapping it, but what ends up happening is that you end up with seams inside the pocket and inserts get stuck, or they're harder to put them in and out. So that's why I like doing pockets this way. So I'm going to do the rest of them and I will come back. Okay, so now I have my 8 panels or pockets all done. I have my 2 clear ones. This is a pure experiment. I've never done this before. I'm a little concerned with how the tape is going to show, but I can always go over top and cover it with washi tape or something if I need to. So I'm not going to worry about it too much at this point. We're just going to wing it and see how it goes, and you know, we're just gonna force ourselves to be creative if we don't like it. But in the meantime, what we're gonna do for these ones is we are going to pair them up, and we're gonna put them pocket sides on the out, right? So we've got a pocket on either side. So I'm gonna make these top loading pockets. So the next thing we need to do is adhere these, but we don't want to adhere, first of all, obviously on all 4 sides, because we don't want anything on the top. So I need tape to go along the edge and the bottom and the side. Now we have to keep in mind that this is going to slide into our album. So this is going to slide into our album, and this accordion hinge is going to connect on either side of this. So the question is it easier to attach this like this when it's loose, or is it easier to adhere these together? I'm thinking it's going to be easier to adhere these partially together. So I am actually going to apply tape on the exterior side and glue this down. I am going to apply tape on the bottom but not remove the backing. And I am going to apply tape on the hinge on either side, 1/4 inch, and we're just going to go all the way down. We could have done this before we glued it into the book. I just honestly wasn't thinking that far ahead, but I don't think this is too hard to do now. It's not the end of the world. So all I'm doing is just applying the adhesive on the mountain side or the hinge side of each flap. So I'm not doing it in the flat base, just on this sticky part, this part that sticks up. I really have to stop doing these at the end of the day because my language skills drastically start to disappear at this time of day. Okay, so I am gonna fast forward through this, and then I will show you how I am doing the pages to make the pockets and how I'm going to attach this in. Okay, so this is what the hinges look like, right? There's adhesive on either side. This is the back side, so pocket on the side. I applied adhesive on the right hand side and on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is only remove this backing for now. And I'm going to align this one, pocket side up, in the corner and along this edge. And I'm doing this, I think, because if I try to do these as separate pages, lining them up afterwards is going to be extremely painful. So we have something that looks like this. So what I am going to do is just peel off this partially and have that sticking out. Again, this Suquang tape is incredibly sticky, and so I want to give myself as much room as possible. Now, remember we trimmed this to 6 inches. This is 6 1/4, so I do have a little bit of wiggle room in aligning this. As long as I align it on the side where the tape is not adhered, so I could press right up against it, I should be good. So I'm just gonna do that. Line that up. I don't know how well you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, I think I like that. Okay, so now this side is adhered, but this side is not. But this should be pretty easy at this point. I'm just going to peel that up and fix that down. So now it lies nice in our book and the hinge is hidden. And then we're just going to pop onto the inside where I have that other adhesive that I didn't take the backing off. I'm going to use a pair of tweezers to pull that out and then give that a good press. Okay, let's try that again. That seemed to work okay. Seemed to work okay. So again, I'm going to have pocket side down, take my adhesive, run it along the bottom and the right hand side, just like so. We're going to peel the right hand side one off, pocket side up. We're going to align the corners like that. Okay, give that a good press. I'm going to try something a little different this time. I'm going to lay this flat. I'm going to see if this works. Now I'm going to align it with the page that we just did, and I'm going to just kind of butt that up to the fold of this hinge. So everything is roughly lined up. I'm not super particular about this kind of thing, so I don't know. I think this might work pretty good though. So then we're going to peel off this backing, and we're just going to fold over this hinge just like so. Give that a good push. Oh, you guys, that's going to work great. Okay, and then we're going to peel this backing off. We can push this up and just sandwich that in. Give it a good press, and again, pull this piece off at the bottom and give that a good press. That's 2 pages. Again, this middle one, we're going to do those 2 acetate sheets. They don't have any pockets, so you don't need to do anything with that. I am going to use the tape though, and I suppose if you wanted to make it prettier, you could sew this instead, but I'm opting to go with the tape just because I think it's going to be easier in the long run, and I don't want to pull out my sewing machine. And like I said, I can use washi tape or ribbon trim or, you know, anything along those lines to cover the adhesive if I don't like the looks of it, right? Just gonna be creative. So I'm gonna peel off the tape on the one side, line this up just like we would with the other pages. Give that a good press. But yeah, you can see the tape. I don't know. We'll see. And we're going to do the exact same thing. So I am going to peel this back a little bit just so we don't get any overlap. peel the one side off, butt this into the corner or the edge of that tape, line this page up with the previous page, fold this over, give it a test, okay. Peel this up, bring this back up, okay, and peel this off and give that a good press. Yeah, not bad. This is still a pocket just like the other thing, so we can slide stuff in. It doesn't bother me too much, the tape, but it's also not the prettiest, so I will probably play around with something for that. But I think that's kind of a fun idea as an insert in this book. Something a little bit different. Okay, so we've got 2 more. I'm going to do it in exact same fashion, and I will come back and show you the basic album. Okay guys, here's the completed base album. We've got the 5 pages, so both sides have pockets, with the 1 page being a see-through page, and then 2 more. And this is all ready for the next step, which is adding cardstock and pocket inserts, you know, making it pretty. Let me know below if you have made hinge style albums before, and if you have any tips and tricks for making this go a little bit smoother. I think this one didn't turn out too bad, and I think if I made more of these I'd get better at them. I'm still happy with how it turned out, and I think I'm gonna have lots of room to add all sorts of goodies. Okay, we'll see you next time. Have a good one and happy crafting.